Welcome to Nacht Waffen Pilot with Penny Bradley. Today we have returning guest, Herr Major. And for those who have not seen his interviews with me before, I'm going to describe that we served for 15 years on a scout spy ship out in deep space where we were collecting intel for Nacht Waffen. And he was my commanding officer. In fact, he met me on a space station where he was working out of, and I was the person who worked on the deep space telemetry array. I kept it operating and functioning, and whenever we were in battle, I operated a fighter plane in space. And after I had an incident, he arranged for me to be transferred to Nacht Waffen, which involved them purchasing the rest of my contract from Kruger Mercenary. So welcome back, Herr Major.
Good morning or evening or wherever you happen to be.
Well, this will be playing in the late afternoon in America. So.
Mm-hmm.
And
well,
apparently Lou
evening,
has decided to make noise. So for those of you who think that I do this for those who think I do this in a studio somewhere, no, this is our apartment. And the back door is open. So if a police car comes by, you're going to hear that too. But Lou's decided
so good background.
Cats.
Well, good evening, Penny.
Good evening.
So we meet to talk again. It's been a while. It feels like a while. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to tell sometimes.
It's been a long time since you've been on my show, at least 6 months. And we had not kept in touch much in the meantime because I had surgery and you have a new job, real world. And it's not that we dislike each other. It's just our paths diverged for a little while and now they're back together. So that happens with friends.
Yeah, the real friends anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, the real friends. You can come back together and it's like you never missed a beat. So per your request, I had the folks on my Facebook come up with questions. Some of them, no, we're not gonna approach those. So the first actual one was, will those of us that were abused, turned inside out, had our souls pulled out and put back in, ever see justice?
Whoa. That's a good question. And, you know, for many years, those of us in the community have been asking that question. And then the other question that inevitably pops up is, you know, is it something we should seek? Is it going to really help anything or anyone or even us? You know, for a long time I was like, when I first, you know, really came to acknowledge the reality of my situation, and there was a time when I was in complete denial about it. I felt angry. You know, I felt like maybe my innocence, my right to a normal childhood and life had been taken away from me without my authority, without my permission. And bearing in mind also that what happened to me pales in comparison compared to what they did to you and your generation. I think that by the time they got to my generation, they had honed their skills in producing us significantly.
Well, they
So
at
for me, it's
least stopped killing so many.
yeah, it's a very wasteful process initially, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I mean, like here in where I live, the process for producing us, I think, is run by perhaps different people than in the States. I don't know. I don't know whether or not it was the difference in generation of the people who were running the operation, or whether or not it was a different operation. But what happened to me was relatively mild compared to others. But would we ever see justice? I think the only justice that I would seek now that I've come to terms with things would be acknowledgement. You know, and I know a lot of what we did can never, you know, it'll never be acknowledged. It can't be acknowledged, you know. A lot of what we did, for all intents and purposes, never happened. So, you know, and that makes me sad, you know, but it was an experience that I don't think that I would give away. I don't think that if I could go back to before it all happened, would I stop it? I don't think so. I think maybe I'm a better person for it, you know.
Well, for me,
So
I would like to see it stopped going forward. I would like to see these programs manned by consenting adults rather than kidnapped children. That's what
I think it's getting more and more that direction. I think
that is where
these
I would
days,
like to see it go, because I know that at least in the United States, I'm still being contacted by families that their 4, 5, 6-year-old children are screaming and refusing to go back to sleep because they don't want to go into space again. So the process is still harsh here.
And see, that's just it. You see, it's funny when that happens to you as a child. You know, it's easy to watch from the inside out and think to yourself, yeah, look, that wasn't so bad. You know, it was horrific at the time, but now, you know, looking back on it, you know, I'm all right with it. You know, but from a parent's perspective, watching it happen to your own kids, that's hard. You know, and especially if the parents aren't really aware of what's going on and can't really provide any support or explanation to their kids, and just tell their kids to just go into denial about it, you know.
Well,
But then I've tried to explain things.
A lot of parents don't want to deal with it at all. So I'm thinking the particular parents who approached me are at least trying to find help for their kids. And in a lot of ways, I'm no help at all, because I'm telling them, well, if it's the CIA, you can't do anything. You know, they're going to come get your kid when they want to, and there's nothing you can do to stop them.
That's pretty much right.
And that's the reality of our situation. And yet I'm sitting here feeling absolutely helpless that I can't do anything to help those children. And yet that is the reason that I'm public, is to try to stop this going forward. Now, as far as justice for what happened to me, I've made peace that that isn't going to happen. The people who should have been brought to justice. I mean, I'm 66. This happened 62 years ago. They're probably dead.
Yeah, most of them are dead. Yeah.
So
That's what
justice,
I came to the impression that,
justice that would
it's
require,
gonna be old people.
now the justice that would require them to see prison, that's not going to happen.
And yeah, we are seeing like drip disclosure about it. I was very skeptical, excuse me, years ago. I knew that there was going to be drip disclosure, slow disclosure in the form of fiction and whatnot about ETs,
Mm-hmm.
but I was very cynical that there would be any disclosure about the SSP. I was thinking there was no way that number one, that they would publicly mention those programs, and number two, whether or not, I doubted very much whether or not the public would be capable of dealing with the concepts. I think it would freak them out too much, disturb them. And yet in recent years we have Stranger Things coming out,
Yeah.
which is like, has some crazy similar aspects to some of the programs.
Oh,
Especially when they mentioned the Rainbow Room. The Rainbow Room definitely, that triggered something in me.
that was so much like where I was kept at Langley, that when I first started watching the series, I would just sit and shake for hours after watching an episode. And
a little too close to home it was.
a lot too close to home it was, yes. And
but it's caused people to start asking questions, that documentary that was made, that you can see on YouTube. It's like a 2-hour documentary called the Montauk Chronicles, where they interview some of the people that were there.
What I found is that most
so it's got people asking questions, and that's good.
Most of the documentaries from Montauk interviewed the perps and not the victims. And they tended to take the attitude of, well, we can't prove this, so maybe it's all fake. And for the people who survived it, that's insulting. If this was the pivotal moment of your childhood, and the perps are admitting to killing 300,000 young boys, and they don't even mention the girls that were there. It's pretty insulting to have
I've noticed that.
Everything from the perspective of the perps, who are trying to justify the science of what they did.
Yep.
So yeah, I don't expect there to be justice, because the actual perps from Montauk have all died. Stuart Swerdlow is still with us, but he was a victim that under Stockholm Syndrome was coerced into becoming a perp. That's not the same thing as someone who is a free will agent that volunteers like the rest of them are. So I recently did a roundtable with Montauk survivors, and I was massively proud of those guys and gals, because this took an incredible amount of courage on their part. So, and they were all well behaved and polite to each other, and it was monumental. Out of all of the shows that I've done, it's the one that I think mattered the most, because those people have been set against each other for so long. And, you know, no, by no means was it all of them. You know, there were at least 500,000 people that went through the Montauk Project in the course of its time. So to only have the 8 or so that were on my roundtable be the only survivors, that's unrealistic. So they are not the only ones. But the CIA archivist, Doris Neely, came on unexpectedly, and she flat out said that everyone on that particular show, that she had a file on them. So she verified that their experiences were real. So that was a major step towards getting it together. Now, folks who were involved in these projects, who were perps, and come forward exposing what happened, I have the utmost respect for them. That takes guts.
Oh, yes. Especially in this day and age.
Yeah, when so few people have the courage to do anything for anyone else. So,
well, it's not just that. It's like the population is so heavily programmed now. You know, it really is like 1984. It really is. You know, and for people to say things, even though, you know, we're supposed to be more open and more has been disclosed than ever before, the population is more programmed than, you know, than I would have thought really, you know, could ever happen. But
well, 1984 was basically laying out the plan of what the elites were planning when it was written in 1948. So it was telling us, okay, I know it's become almost cliche, but the religion of the elite groups does require that they get our consent for what they're doing to us. And so if they present us with an idea, even as fiction, and we do not stand out and say no out loud, then we've given consent. And that's a idea that people balk at. But all of the rape laws throughout the entire planet basically say if a woman doesn't say no, then it isn't raped. Same thing with these plans that they have. If we haven't said no, then we've given consent. And people need to really stop and look at that. What have you given consent to today simply by ignoring it? Well, I'm not going to think about that today. I'm not going to do anything about that today. Well, 20 years later, when they implemented the plan, you're going, what? You know, pay attention. So, okay.
So long story short, I don't think it'll ever be, we'll ever really see like real justice for it. You know, just as much as I don't think we'll ever see justice, you know, for what Epstein did or anything like that. You know,
well,
you know, when the
Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison now for 20 years, unless her lawyers get her off on appeal. And
yeah, but then there's the hundreds of others, you know.
well, they never did give out her customer list. So
nope.
there are thousands worldwide,
So
maybe
she's the
millions.
sacrificial lamb.
So the next question on our list,
Mm.
any new memories?
Boy, any new memories? Okay. Just lately, I have been I've been remembering more about what happened before I came here as a human. So, but I don't think that's what that question is really pertaining to. It's about SSP stuff. Off the cuff, there have been a couple of things that have come through. I know that I'm definitely still active up there at the moment. There have
As
been
am
a
I.
couple of times when I have, yeah, when I've woken up. It's really strange waking up the next morning because you think you just assume you're waking up from being asleep, you know, because it's similar. But then you sort of you feel like you haven't slept, and your body certainly feels like you haven't rested, and is normally I've got sore knees and sore ankles and sore feet because I've been running and walking and being incredibly physical, and then basically have came home, laid down for half an hour, and then like went inactive and thought that I had been laying in bed all night. And then you get you get the questions, inevitable questions from your family, like, where did you go last night?
Yeah.
What were you doing? And I'm like, oh, I don't know, sleepwalking maybe. I don't know.
Lucy's the red portal.
Yeah.
So where'd you go
There
last
are
night?
and yeah, I I'm aware of the fact that most of the Nacht Waffen forces are currently docked at Ceres. I know that at the moment, and I know that they have some very large the Aurora class vessels. I know there's at least one currently docked at Ceres at the moment. So I don't know whether or not they're basically just leaving it there for the time being. I know that there's a bit of a population issue with Ceres at the moment. As a whole lot of free Germans have turned up there and can't go back to Earth and can't go to Mars. So, this is home.
Why can't they go to Mars?
There's some sort of change in the agreement with the Federation. Hang on, let me get my words right here. The Federation have basically told Nacht Waffen that this is an agreement. Basically, if they get off Mars, they can have Ceres. That's pretty much my understanding of it. This is my real basic understanding of it. Bear that in mind. Like, this is little bits and pieces of memory that I've put together. But basically, my understanding is that Mars is now basically like not their sovereign territory, and that, but they've been allowed to keep Ceres. And the interesting thing is that
Who
my
is
understanding is
this
that they're not
federation?
the feds, the what would you call it?
The people like all the Guardians?
The I guess the ones who wear like the monk habits and the elders, the you know.
I don't know these people, so you're going to have to describe them better.
Okay. So the old power that used to occupy our region of space, the Imperium, the Empire, whatever you want to call it. It's a caste-based, hierarchical government with different races at different levels of the castes. They used to occupy our area of space and were the power, and to some extent they still have some bases here, but not many now. They've been mostly removed, I understand. The Federation are a what do you call the type of government that's run by basically the older you are, the more senior you are?
Don't know.
Oh, I'm trying to remember it, but that's basically. Sorry.
I don't know.
Oh well, it's kind of like that. The older and more advanced the soul is, the more senior you are. And so, but they're very intensely bureaucratic. This is the Federation, the Feds, and yeah, it's much more of a cooperative government. Man, I should have written something down if I knew that. That was, how do you define the Federation?
Well,
But
I don't know
I know that
anything
60% of
about
the
them.
population of the Federation, 60% of the population of the Federation don't have bodies. I know that much. So if you'd imagine, they're more like disincarnates, I suppose you'd say. And I know they have the capability to literally move stars with telekinesis. But they work cooperatively. They're very telepathic. It's not any particular race that runs it. They're kind of beyond the whole concept of racial stuff. And that's where we are now. That's the people that are in our area now that have the authority. Yeah. Sorry, I wish I'd had more time to think about how to define them. Yeah. I know that when you see them, when you see their officials, they are often wearing these like monk robes with hoods.
What color?
Almost like Jedis, you know. And
What color robes?
yeah, they sorry?
What color robes?
Brown. Always brown. Yeah, and I know they're not all the same race when they wear them, because some of them are big, some of them are small, you know. Yeah, I kind of got the impression actually that when George Lucas did Star Wars, actually, that he was using the federal authority as a inspiration for the rebellion, for the Jedi, etc. You know, and I know that they are they normally operate at least in groups of 3s, 5s, or 7s, and the elders are called to make decisions on things quite like almost constantly, even down to little things such as what they can even have be asked to make decisions about things that me and you do. Even that's happened before. Yeah, and I also know that if you do the wrong thing too much, and they actually judge that you are malevolent in what you did, you can experience hell for years. Like, they can literally take your existence and put you into like a hell type situation for years. But I don't know. I know of some people who have done some pretty nasty things, and they haven't done that to them. So You must be a real nasty person for that to have happened to.
Well, I haven't.
But yeah.
I haven't.
But anyway, we
I've
diverged.
experienced some things that felt like hell on earth, but I have not actually been dumped into hell. No.
Oh, maybe we're there right now and we just don't know it.
I've often wondered about that, but I do try to keep religion out of the show. There are too many.
Well, I don't know. I
There
don't.
are too many people on that obsessively watch my show who are Christian, Muslim, atheist, New Age, or other. And whenever we go into religion, whichever one that we talk about, they do their little happy dance, and the rest of them all get mad at me. And I would just as soon not experience. I would just as soon not experience that. Thank you. I have learned.
All right, we'll stay off the topic of spiritualism.
They are obsessive and nasty. So we leave them the fuck alone.
If there's one thing I've learned is that there's always another layer to existence. Yeah. You know what I mean?
There
like
is.
Just when you think that you've gotten to the bottom of all of this, what is this? Then you realize, nope, there's another layer to it.
Every time I think I've gotten to the bottom of the rabbit hole and I'm sitting there feeling pleased with myself, all of a sudden the floor collapses and I find out it was the roof of another layer. So, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
It just keeps digging itself deeper. So, okay.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe if we go deep enough, we'll wind up back at the top again.
I've gotten to where I can't even explain what I know to people who haven't gone into the rabbit hole. So we have another person who had a whole lot of questions. So we'll start with the first one.
Okay.
What was
Herr
Major's command responsibilities in Nacht Waffen?
Oh, I can tell you the bits that I remember.
Well, that's all we can do is what we remember.
Pretty much. And I hope people don't expect too much because, honestly, I don't remember that much.
Folks, I have known this man here for 7 years. And he gets mind wiped regularly. So we're lucky he remembers anything at all. It's frustrating talking to him because he'll remember something vividly and you can ask him about it 6 weeks later and it's gone. It's what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's more frustrating than anything else.
Yeah.
But sometimes it can take a bit of work and I can get the memory back. I just need something to remind me of it,
Okay. So what were your command responsibilities in Nacht Waffen?
All right. Like now or in my career, or how do you think they mean that? How do you want to interpret
that? Why don't you do a step-by-step? What were your responsibilities when you were Capitan and snagged me? What are your command responsibilities now? So split it.
Okay, I can basically tell you what I was doing at different times. I know that the difference between when I got promoted to Major, it was really funny because I was meeting with my superior, who was a major,
Mhm.
and she flat out told me, she said, "Congratulations." And I'm like, "Oh, what for?" She said, "You've been promoted." And at that, to be honest, that actually somewhat worried me, because generally when they promote you in Nacht Waffen, you know, it sounds great, but really it just means that you've got a whole lot more responsibility,
Mhm.
and they expect you to basically put yourself in a lot more danger, essentially. Um, but the honestly, the difference between what I'm doing now and what I was doing when I was a captain, not much difference. When I was a captain, the vessel was it was a regular fleet vessel. When they promoted me to major, that was when they gave me the spats. So, you know, we were doing, you know, we basically had gone from regular military to being spooks. So, um, and I don't think
And
I had done
that was
any
when
spook work.
my quote rough came in handy,
Yeah, well,
because
they
I
asked me to basically recruit my own team, and you know, that's why I thought of you. So I remember that.
because I did not,
And
in
so
that altar, I did not appear to be German military.
yeah.
I did
And
not
the
meet
interesting bit is that
profile.
my superior got me that promotion. She essentially got me that job.
Cool.
And shortly after that, she died here on Earth. She
Did
just
she die
basically
out there
resigned
too?
from. Well, yeah, she's not out there anymore. So it was like she resigned. It was like literally like she just went, nah, not doing this anymore.
Can you
So
do
I don't know
that?
whether or not essentially she. Sorry,
Can you actually do that?
I. She did.
Because I've been told that
Um.
when I die here, that they will redial, you know,
Mhm.
the refone, and come get me and put me in regen.
Well, you are a different kind of asset. um. But
Good
I
or
remember that
bad?
she uh, different. um. I remember that she basically just resigned herself. She just said, "No, not doing this anymore." And she disappeared from up there, and she disappeared from down here. Well, she didn't disappear from down here. She just, like, you know, she just upped and died. Um, and I remember the day she died, she called me and said goodbye and wished me luck.
Yeah, I remember we talked
And
about that at the time, and you were just heartbroken.
yeah, I actually, it was kind of embarrassing, because like normally, like I'm fairly good with my emotions, but even that day at work, like I was just crying at my desk for hours. It's crazy. Um, so yeah, so she got me that promotion. I think, I don't know, just before she died. Um, and and yeah, and then we got the Spuds and spent the next 15 years poncing around the galaxy. um,
So
you know, and that was different, because as a
corrupting,
captain, like I said, it was.
we were bebopping around the galaxy, corrupting bar owners with Johnny Walker Red. That's what we were
I
doing.
was.
Contraband in
It was a
exchange,
very.
contraband in exchange
Yeah.
for information.
it was a pretty good gig, to be honest.
Yeah.
There's a picture actually that I saw Tony Rodriguez had posted on his wall. I think it was one that, I think Tony didn't draw it. I think he had an artist do it. But it's of these two Nacht Waffen guys and these reptiloid type people wearing, like, cloaks with hoods.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh my God, it's like one of my best memories that I can remember of working on the Spuds was just one where we were dropping off stuff to this yeah to this township of these reptiloids, and they were wearing those clothes and everything. And I was like, it's literally like somebody else who was there drew that picture,
Yeah.
And I was like, unless, of course, I mean, obviously we probably aren't the first people to go there and do that. So maybe somebody else who had done that before,
Well, it was in
But
reference to a trip that Tony had been on, where he had to pretend to be an officer because they thought that whoever did the drop off was going to be killed. So they sent the slave out to do it.
Okay.
That was the part of the story that you're forgetting, was this was something he experienced, but it's such a common experience among Nacht Waffen that it's not like it's his story
I
alone.
expect somebody else had been there before. No.
Yeah, we don't make this stuff up out of thin air. It's common experiences that we have out there. And no, we're not stealing Tony's story. Yes, this happened to Tony, but something similar.
I mean, it might have been it might have been a different planet. It might have been a different township. Who knows? Yeah. But like those people, the reptiloids, looked like the little cloaks and their hoods and stuff, and the crafts in the picture, and the uniforms they were wearing. It was kind of like, oh, yeah, been there, done that.
We've done that, yeah.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to make it clear to the public, we're not stealing Tony's story. We just have one of our own that's a lot like it.
Yeah. If anything, it's corroborating Tony's experience, really.
Exactly. So. Or at least that's how we see it. I hope he does too. I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure he listens to my show. So,
I don't think he even listens to his own interviews. I think he prefers to just.
If his followers are like my followers, everything I'm mentioned in, I get a link to it in Messenger.
Mm-hmm.
There are not
if any of his followers are listening.
Yeah. There are not enough hours.
If any of his followers are listening, yeah, me and Tony and I are aware of each other, and we have swapped. We have yacked to each other.
Oh hell,
It's what we
were admins on a group together, and we had our own little chat room where we talked all the time. We've known each other for yes,
was he in the admin chat room, was he?
Yes. We've known each other for 7 years before we were all public.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what the public
getting all nostalgic now.
That's what the public misses, is we know each other. No. We've been sitting back rooting for each other, or at least I was rooting for them. I don't know if they were rooting for me or not. I don't care. I'm doing what I am compelled to do. So I have this
Mm.
compulsion to try to get this stuff stopped happening to new children. So that's why I'm public.
Mm.
That and the fact that somebody was shooting at me, and it still continued after I went public. So going public didn't matter to them. So between wanting this
Mm.
stuff stopped and being shot at, that's why I'm
Mm.
public. So
I remember when that happened.
yeah, you remember when I got shot.
Mm. Oh yeah, I remember that. Yes, I remember we were trying to figure out what type of weapon it was, and
Yeah,
we figured that out, and we figured out approximately where it came from too. Mm.
You were the one that told me that the dew weapon was made with iodine crystals and would cause internal bleeding. And I was hit in the right kidney with that. And to this day, I still piss blood from that. So
Yeah, it
that
was
was
a
in
maser weapon. That was.
that one was in 2016. I
Mm.
that was the reason I went public, was because I was hit with the iodine dew, and the ones after that
Mm.
were masers.
It's a fairly common assassination weapon. See, that's just it. Is that like regular police or regular security even wouldn't even recognize uh, that type of weapon, even if it was pointed right at them. You
No, they
know,
wouldn't.
and when you get hit by a maser, it's not like bits of you blow off or you get a hole punched in you or anything like that. It's insidious because it literally cooks you from the inside.
Mhm.
Um, and I mean, the first sign that you might actually have been hit by a maser might just simply be like a stomach ache or chest pains.
I
You
felt like I
know,
was being hit by a
and
log. It was
mm, the
the
next
most
thing,
painful experience I've ever had.
and very quickly, the person literally might walk away for like 100 meters and then collapse with no signs of, you know, they might have some surface burns, like some redness, but you
Yeah,
know, like nothing that would. It's not unless they actually get cut open do they actually see they've been cooked. So
yeah.
yeah, very insidious weapon. That I suspect a lot more people actually die from being hit by those than what anybody really knows.
Especially if they have any connection to any of the Black Ops. And I would say
Mm,
99% of us don't have any memory at all. We have no clue that this ever happened to us, unless
mm,
for some reason you remember.
mm.
Okay, next question from that same person.
Did we answer that question well enough? I'm sorry if I can't
I
really give
don't
you too
I
much
don't think you
detail.
answered it at all, but we're going to skip to the next one.
Okay, I'm trying my best. Okay.
In his commands, has he traveled
Mm.
only galactically, or was intergalactic travel possible, and what known galaxies have been reached?
Oh my goodness! Wow. Okay. Okay. So I have. Um, See, the problem is that when you go to a different planet or you're even traveling through space, it's not like there are street signs saying, you are now leaving the Western Arm or something like that. You know what I mean? It's just
I'm a
stars on a
navigator. I
a
have
black
the star
background.
map in my head. So
Yeah, but there's no
I
street
know when
signs,
we've left.
Yeah. And I mean,
Yeah,
but you get there's a feeling, you know that, you know where you are, but you don't. Um,
You
But
know where
if, say,
you
for
are, but you
example, we
don't know.
suddenly,
You have no idea what the name of it is regard to the people back home, because we're speaking
yeah,
German
like,
out there and they have different names for things, and you know where you are in space and time, but you have no way to describe it to the guys
well,
back on Earth in English.
I mean, hypothetically, well, not hypothetically. Let's use my experience of Mars as an example. Now, when I was on Mars initially, nobody told me that I was on Mars. You know, I assumed
You
I was in a
didn't
desert
see,
somewhere.
you didn't come through the jump gate and get the big sign that said Willkommen ins Mars?
When I first sort of, what could you say, became aware of what was going on. I can't really explain it any other way. When I started being aware of what was going on, I was already there. And I was when I kind of became aware of what was going on, I was on a patrol. And I think the other guys in the patrol knew that something wasn't right with me either. But you know, I mean, I had no clue where I was, and to be honest, they had no clue where they were either. I suppose we didn't need to know. So we didn't know. All we
So
knew that there were bad guys.
you were just out in the desert shooting at, at raptors or ants, huh?
Yeah, yeah. Like we kind of initially, I kind of got in my head from somewhere that had been some sort of nuclear holocaust,
Okay.
and that I was in some kind of post-apocalyptic Mad Maxy kind of weird ass sci-fi, you know, thing.
Okay.
And I remember we
That
were
describes
we
it.
were yeah.
That describes it really
and,
well.
and it was kind of, you know, and I was just coping with it, you know, as far as I was concerned. My family had died, been nuked. Somehow I had survived. And
You
here
had
I
no
am
idea.
now,
You had
and had
no
no idea.
idea. Okay.
Yeah, no idea
Here,
how I got there or anything.
I at least knew that I had come through a jump gate and had landed on a place where they told me it was Mars.
Mm. So I figured out where I was because I started noticing inconsistencies, and because I had earlier gone through academy at Nacht Waffen, I
Okay.
still knew a lot of stuff, you know, even though I couldn't remember going through academy yet. But I still knew a lot of things. Like I knew planetary astronomy, and I knew how to figure out where I was. So after, I think it was a couple of months, I figured out that I was on Mars. When
Okay.
you looked up in the night sky, you know, and you start to realize that there's Mercury, Venus, and then there's another Venus. You know,
A blue
that
one,
was when I started to clue on. You know,
a blue
yeah, that
Venus.
was when I.
Yeah.
Well, from recollection, it's not like, you know, dark blue or anything. It's kind
No.
of like the same light from Venus, except it's like a cold white light. So it does have a blue tinge to it.
Yeah.
Um, with your naked eye, you know.
Yeah.
So it's a
Cloud
more
cover.
bluer color than
There's cloud
yeah,
cover,
pretty
but
much.
it's got a blue tinge, and you only see part of
Yep.
it where the sun's hitting. So it's not. It doesn't appear like a sphere. It appears like half of it's dark, or
Oh yeah,
sometimes
it's just a
from Mars,
bright star, really.
it doesn't really have phases, but it does.
When my eyes are at their best, when the Earth was very close to the sun, on our side of the sun,
Mm-hmm.
you could look at the Earth just make out a that what you're looking at is a what do you call it, uh, just a fingernail of color, of light, as opposed to a dot, just a point of light.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember that, but it's only when it comes round and it's on, it's in between Mars and the sun, you can just see that fingernail ever so slightly if you've got good eyes. And we did have very good eyes. So
Yeah,
anyway,
it's amazing that
my,
I had good eyes there, because here I have to wear reading glasses.
well, we have a lot of shit pumped into us there that, and a lot of medical attention to make sure everything's working right. So, but my point about Mars is that nobody told us where we were because I didn't need to know. So when you're out there in the galaxy, unless you are told where you are, you have something to show you where you are or something like that. It's you could be inside the solar system, or you could be in another galaxy entirely. It takes, if you have good grounding and navigation, you can go outside at night or look out the window, and you can kind of figure out on a lot of occasions approximately where you are, from what you can see out the window.
Mm-hmm.
You can at least figure out whether or not you're in the Milky Way or not.
Most
I
of
know
the
that.
places we went, you could see Orion.
Oh yeah.
But
it's funny how Orion I always got excited when I could see Orion.
yeah, it meant we were in the general
I
neighborhood of
think
home.
Yeah, I remember looking out the cockpit and just seeing Orion and going, "Yep, we're almost home."
Yep.
Actually, that still makes me excited.
Yeah, it does. Orion more than most of
It's
the
just
other.
it's just such a big, obvious pattern of stars.
It's that big man with a belt, and you can
only see it in the solar system.
No, you could see that anywhere in the Draco Empire. Anywhere in the Draco Empire, you can see Orion.
No, I don't know. I mean, I remember
What
it meant to me was that we were close
tilted,
to home.
But
it gets warped.
Yeah,
it does.
It gets warped, but
um,
you can see that almost anywhere in the Draco Empire, and that's where most of the places we went were. Now, I remember going to other galaxies once in a while, but we were assigned to do intel regarding German colonies, and most of them are in overlapping the Draco Empire. At least how I remember it.
They're inside of it.
Yeah, there are some that are outside of it in what they call the no man's zone.
They're pretty wild and woolly places, though, and I think they're places you'd really want to be, though. Either they're not safe.
They're not safe even for a Nacht Waffen. That's why they sent us.
Yeah. They're pretty wild places. I mean, when you're in the Draco Empire, they know who we are. And they know that that we're polite, but things can go bad quickly if you're not polite, and that helps.
We had a reputation.
But once you're outside of there, we did. Once you're outside of that, then things can get pretty dangerous pretty quickly. I remember I kind of got sick of the instant reaction that we had. You know what I mean? Like there was that, as soon as they realized who we were, there was a lot of like kowtowing or submissive behavior. And you know, I didn't want that, you know.
I don't think the
I just
Draco
wanted
liked
them
that from folks either, because they were, how they were treating us was a like miniature version of how they reacted to the Draco.
Yeah.
Because we were their enforcers. So of course we would get the same reaction that they got. But they didn't understand, and the people here on Earth don't understand that that relationship was the rent for the colonies.
Yeah. There wasn't that much interaction really with them. There was a bit, but it's not like, you know, like you'd see a Draco every day or anything like that.
No, but you know, you and I both had the CRISPR gene therapy that made us partially Draco. And so when a Draco did interact with us, they were generally polite.
Yeah. It's funny, you know, because like I couldn't understand why they were so freaked out about having an audience with a Draco. Like it felt weird. Like it felt like, you know, my consciousness was kind of getting pulled out the front of my head. It's a weird sort of feeling.
Full intimacy telepathy is not for the weak.
Yeah. And I've had that ever since I can remember, ever since I was a baby, you know.
Yeah.
Like I've had that experience. And the funny thing about Draco is that they're just such powerful telepaths. When they talk to you, it's like, you know, they've got the volume up to absolute maximum and it's distorted to all hell.
I just tell them, to turn down the volume, and they go, "Oh,
yeah,
sorry,"
it
and they
took me a
do.
while. And it took me a while to realize that, like, you don't have to sit there and try to like work your way through getting blasted. You can just say, "Whoa, steady on there." Like, you talk a lot quieter, please. I'm not deaf. And they actually say sorry.
They do.
They're like, oh, sorry.
They are so used to humans not being able to hear them unless they scream. So then they get one of us, and
It's
we're like, you know, you don't have to scream at me. I'm right here. You know?
Yeah. And it's so funny, like, you know, the way people depict Draco, you'd expect them to be like, you know, fear me, petty human, you know, but then when you actually talk to them, you're like, can you please stop yelling? And they go, oh, sorry. And then they're very timid and polite. But that's just it. Like, if you're polite and respectful to them, like that's their normal operational way of doing things. You be super polite and super respectful. Doesn't matter who it is,
You
know,
grant
and
them their honor.
no groveling or trying to suck up, because they can see straight through that.
Oh yeah.
Anytime you start to try and brown them, it pisses them off. And they can see that. You know, as soon as you start, I mean, like they'll kill somebody for brown nosing. You know, because as far as they're concerned,
they'll treat you like you're a slave forever if you act like one. And brown nosing is a surefire way to trigger that. You want them to treat you with respect. You act like you deserve it.
Yeah.
And then you come to Earth You come to Earth and act that way, and you're told, well, I get told that I'm an arrogant bitch, and I'm like, what?
Yeah,
No.
that's exactly right. To me, it's just the normal way of dealing with people. You
Mhm.
treat them politely and respectfully, and I expect the same back.
Exactly.
And I don't brown nose. And the funny thing is that when and then here on Earth
There
amongst terrestrial
are
humans, brown nosing is a standard part of their culture, really.
There are a couple of people that I get absolutely giddy around them. I don't know why, but I do. And those particular individuals probably think I'm brown nosing them, but it's just this emotional euphoria being around them.
But you're being honest about it. The thing that pisses off
Yeah.
Dracos about brown noses is that they're not being honest.
Yeah.
Dracos are all about honesty.
Mm-hmm.
And they can see straight through you. If you sit there and you start to try and give them, what do they call it when you're giving them like verbal compliments and
Flattery.
if you start trying to do that, flattery, that's the word I was looking for.
Flattery.
You do that, they'll
It's also
immediately, they can
known.
tell straight away.
It's also known as manipulation. And
Platitudes.
there are people who try that on me, and I react like a Draco would. I seriously do. It's get away from me with that shit. Be real. Be real, or don't interact with me at all.
But terrestrials do it. It's like the standard like default setting for a terrestrial.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, your hair's very nice today, or you're wearing nice clothes, or you look like you've lost weight, or your hair, you're looking very whatever, or or like, oh, you're very smart, or and it's like, you just it's just like their default setting is automatic brown nosing.
I've been told that flattery is the social lubricant, that it allows aggressive personalities to coexist.
And yet,
the Draco, who are considered to be the most extreme aggressors, don't use any of that. You come in, you're polite, you're respectful, but you're not a kiss ass.
Nope.
So, okay.
Yeah.
So the next question that part didn't get answered is, yes, we did go into other galaxies. You want to name some of them?
Yes. The only one that I remember ever visiting was Andromeda, and that was because it was pretty cool. It didn't look any different to the Milky Way. It just, I just remember thinking, holy shit, we're a long way from home. And I remember we had to use like a special gateway for it, and we had to get permission for it. And I remember that coming out the other side, I was amazed by how quick we went through it. It was just like nothing. I
have been in other galaxies, but not on your team. There are German colonies in other galaxies as well.
Yeah, my memory of that is the policy is basically to spread as far and wide as possible to increase survivability.
And to get us as far as possible from Earth. Because the farther we are from Earth, the more survivability.
Yep. And then they just don't have that many people to really do too many colonies, but I wonder actually whether or not they all had to come back. I remember when we went and we collected. You were on a different vessel. This is after the Spats. I remember I was given this really shit old clunker, and we were taking an entire colony off a planet that were evacuating. That was during the big evacuation. And you know, I can't help but wonder, like, how many colonies managed to stay out there.
What I
Anyway.
know of that situation is that I have 90 alters out there running ships, or at least in one case, I'm the navigator of an armada, and Matt Tracy serves with me. And in fact, that particular armada used to be commanded by Joseph Powell, and he defected to ICC. And I ended up somehow in command of it, and Oberkommando left me there. And so I'm commanding the armada, which is 20 ships, and we are rescuing
Big
colonists from that same colony. And because it's a time loop and that those alters are already back with me, I know that for all the efforts that Nacht Waffen, Kruger, and the Draco Empire, all of the efforts that we did, we were only able to save half the people. So that has been a major, major disappointment that we were not able to save more than we did, but we simply ran out of ships. And we had officers who went batshit and did all kinds of incredibly stupid things. And as we would come through the portal in the sun, back into the solar system, because that's where the Guardians said we had to go, we would be greeted at the sun by ICC ships and have to fight our way back into the solar system so we could go to the Oort cloud where the Guardians said we had to resettle. And it has been, I've been listening to other whistleblowers who are members of ICC saying that they fought these glorious battles and that they beat the Draco and they beat the Germans and they blah, 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 bullshit. They were attacking, they were attacking refugee ships. That's what they were doing. Women and children.
Yes.
They were
glorious battles killing women and children.
Yes, great warriors killing women and children. And they would take the survivors and turn them into cyborgs to sell to extraterrestrials in exchange for broken toys. So,
well, that's ICC for you.
Yeah, and yet
great heroes, they really are.
Because they called themselves the Alliance, they are suddenly great heroes, and half the planet thinks that they got their shit together, and they don't. And I'm frankly tired of hearing about them. So, you know, I had to fight out there. I had to fight to get the refugees to the Oort cloud, to resettle them. They're having to fight to have survival. Their men stayed behind because women and children first. So you've got families without the men. And so now you've got all of these kids are growing up without fathers. And in the German civilians, the fathers matter. It's not exactly a patriarchal society, but at least the men matter. And I'm looking at all of this crap from the perspective of me here on Earth, watching a cultural war here and going, what the fuck is wrong with humans?
And they don't
Okay.
even realize it's going on. It's really obvious from the outside, I can tell you that much.
Well, this
And
Gina
it's hard
Hill,
to just watch.
this Gina Hill person, she's been taking photographs of the German ships coming through the sun. And she doesn't know what they are. And she thinks that the solar system's being invaded. But no, these are human beings who originally were from Earth. Okay. Now, there are some cute ones here. Questions. In regards to
I love cute questions.
In regards to intergalactic destinations, what dangers and new discoveries were waiting? Were there advanced civilizations they're welcoming, or were they asked to leave? Were there technologies revealed that even you were taken aback by?
Yes, absolutely. And the thing is that when you're dealing with a civilization whose technology is just so way past yours, I mean, you know, they just become so. It's funny, they almost become ghost-like. They, you know, and when their technology is so advanced, they can literally, if you come into their territory, they can literally turn you around and send you off back where you came from, and you don't even realize that it's happened to you until you're on your way out again. So, you know, there are other ones that, you know, you literally, like, they're just phased out of this, Penny would call it density. And you know, you're not even aware they're there unless they want you to be aware of them. So
That's a cloaking.
You know,
That's a form of cloaking.
that's a type of cloak. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they've cloaked, you know, they can cloak their entire planet. They can cloak their entire solar system. I've heard of things like that. The one lesson that you learn being up there is like, literally anything's possible. Anything's possible. You know, and every time you start to think that something's impossible, then you get proven wrong. No, they can do that.
Oh, yeah.
For example, they can move an entire solar system. You know, that's possible to do. You can cloak an entire solar system. You can send an entire solar system into a different density if you want to.
And if you are really mad at those people, you won't let them take their star with them, and then they freeze to death and die. Seriously.
So, yeah, you know, if you can imagine it, it can happen. And stuff that you can't even imagine, there are people out there that can do.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, it gets to the point where they're verging on what people would call omnificent and godlike. You know, my understanding is that, like, our souls have been capable of that before, but I suspect that basically it becomes too boring for us and we want a challenge. And when you have the capability of doing anything, anywhere, anytime, life just is boring, you know? So
you're saying we need limitations.
yeah, we've literally given ourselves limitations to make life a challenge, to make it interesting. Because you know, forever with no limitations is a hell, you know.
Well, I'm not convinced
So
that
yeah, so
this isn't hell already.
neither am I, but remember, we weren't going to talk about that.
That's true.
Yeah, but yeah, if you can imagine it. But specifically, any technologies that I came across that were wondrous, I think the first time I came across a HRC, that kind of blew me away when I was a teenager.
HRC.
You know, the regen chambers.
Oh,
Because like that was, and that's not really that advanced technology. My understanding is that it's the mantid people manufacture them, and
yeah.
they have a full understanding of how they work. Nacht Waffen leases them off the mantids, and I think pays them per use.
And I'm not sure what they pay them with, but
And
yeah, that's what I understand.
so I know that they aren't keen on using them willy-nilly. There is a cost involved.
Yeah.
So, but they'll, I have no doubt that Nacht Waffen is secretly trying to figure them out, and who knows, may have done it by now.
I know that the gel is made out of black goo that has had its sentience removed. But I don't know the process they use for doing that. And that
Can't imagine that need to hit it with like a massive electromagnetic field or something.
The tablet on the outside is a computer that programs the gel, and it uses a drop of your blood to set up the whole restoration. But at the same time, if the tech knows what they're doing, they can repair genetic issues. Like eyesight, like bad feet, like. So
and when you come back, if you can bribe the tech who's running the chamber, they can fix issues for you.
I
know that much.
I have had them fix small things before they brought me back. Not often, but it has been known to happen.
I suspect they're not supposed to do it. I'm pretty sure they're not supposed to do it, but I think if they think that they can get away with it and they like you enough, then they'll do it for you.
Well, the things that are wrong with me at this stage of my life are so overwhelming that even fixing one of them makes a big difference to me. And so I'm like overwhelmingly grateful to them.
From recollection, they have done that before, though, haven't they?
Yeah,
there was an instance that when they did actually agree to fix one of those major problems.
They have fixed several things, and I've had those disincarnates you talked about have fixed other things. So I don't want to talk about that on air. Thank you.
No.
People are already calling me a demon. I don't need to encourage that. So the next question, how many alters is he personally aware of, and what roles have they been assuming off-world?
Well, my case is a lot simpler. From what people talk about alters, I understand personally, I think I have just 2. And I know that a lot of people say they have a lot more, but me personally, I'm aware of 2. And one of them, and I'm not even sure whether or not they could be classified as alters.
Do they share
to me,
memory?
I call one of them I call one of them my active self and one of them my inactive self. So I don't know if they did that sort of thing to me when they were when they were making me, so to speak.
Mm.
I do remember like some of the things that they attribute to making altars, such as the drowning thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like because I remember the drowning, but I remember also being told that the reason why we had to learn to drown is to be able to use the HRCs. You know, and for a kid, that's a traumatic thing to have to learn to do to yourself.
Yeah.
But it's critical because if you wake up in a HRC and your lungs are full of liquid, if you panic, your throat will close up, and when you come out of that, you'll die anyway. So, so it's critical to be able to drown yourself, and that's my recollection of the drowning things that a
Well,
lot of people refer to.
that was why I
Um,
couldn't learn to swim. I kept inhaling the pool.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
It's just like once you kill that instinct off, it's
Yeah.
kind of it's something that you have to. I think a lot of people aren't aware of how instinctual and automatic your control of your mouth and nose and everything is when you swim. And I think a lot of people don't realize that if once you kill off that instinct, it's something you have to think about when you swim.
Mm-hmm.
um, and I think it's something that I had to, you know, I mean, it happened such a long time ago now. I just like it's now something I control, but I do it like, you know, without really thinking.
Okay.
But yeah. So answer to that, like I might have two, but Penny has noticed, like does notice when I go active, and I'm like it's not like a switch when you're one or the other. It's like you can phase from being inactive to active and be in different states of it. It's like a grayscale. What do you think, Penny? For me, that is.
For you, I have noticed several, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll just put it in we we vacationed together one year. You, me, Lou, Misha, and Kevin Estrella, who wrote my music. And when you left, Misha had a couple of things to say to me. One was that I can go from normal to too deep in under 10 seconds. The other
Yes.
one, the other one was that you can go from a normal human being to that German officer in about the same speed. So, yeah, no, I'm not mad at Misha. I just thought it was curious, funny, ironic that she put it that way. You
Yeah.
probably
I mean,
still notice I'm turning red,
mhm.
but yeah.
I mean, people have commented. I've noticed people have commented and said, like, you know, like, oh yeah, you changed.
You do. You do. You change.
Yeah.
You turn into that German officer really easily. But it's okay.
Mm.
Okay, the next question.
Oh. Mm.
Different asker. Is he able to
Mm-hmm.
share some interesting things about Australia's involvement in the SSP? So little is known about it. All countries are involved,
Mm.
especially a spaceport near Pimba in South Australia, near the bomb testing site in
Mm.
Woomera.
Woomera? Woomera.
And
Yeah.
she gave me pictures. They appear to
Yeah.
be from Google
So,
Maps.
Yeah, I know that Australia, country-wise, it's one country. But as far as SSP activity here is concerned, there appears to be two different states, so to speak, two different countries. One seems to be one that's primarily operated by Nacht Waffen, and one that's operated by ICC. I know that the ICC seem to be most prevalent down in Victoria. The Nacht Waffen is up further north in Queensland, northern New South Wales. And they're very different. And I believe that they have quite a strong influence on how the states operate. They have very different personalities. I know that there is a fairly massive base in the center, the Great Central Desert, that is it's not owned by Nacht Waffen. It's owned by the terrestrial sauroids. And we, what would you call it? My understanding is that we lease like port space, so to speak.
The sauroids being the Ceres people.
Yeah, the terrestrial sauroids. So
Okay.
the people who descended from dinosaurs.
Okay.
And they have like an actual surface facility here, and that's in the vicinity of Mount Isa. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
You know, and there is I know that there is another base that's just west of Brisbane, out near a town called Warwick. And that base there is a one that's operated both by Nacht Waffen and the Tall Whites. They operate out of that base. I think it was initially a Tall White base, to be honest. But I think Nacht Waffen probably came in and refitted it out.
Okay.
As for down south, my knowledge of the ICC territory is not great. I don't know a lot about what they're doing down there. I know there's an absolute shit ton of traffic that travels between Australia and Antarctica, or at least there used to be. I don't know now. And by that I mean German traffic. And I suspect a lot of when the German Antarctic city was still German, my understanding is that a lot of them actually used to take vacations in Queensland. So anyway,
Can't
that's
blame them.
interesting. No, not at all. It's better than Antarctica, right?
I don't know.
I understand.
I have no memories of being in Antarctica or on the moon. My memories start.
Well, deep underneath. I mean, it's what you'd imagine for an underground base, but it's still gray and not much fun, I think they used to enjoy stretching their legs, like a subtropical environment. Yeah. So they and I understand a lot of the Germans from down there ended up settling in Australia, moving away from the German city down there and settled in Australia. So come across a few of them here while I've been here.
Yeah, you mentioned that in our conversations for a while back.
If you know what to
Okay.
look for, you can pick them out.
We have about 15 minutes left, and we have a question from another asker. What was the quality of life in the free German worlds, the average lifespan, the level of tech, their idea of entertainment, and would you live there?
Well, I did for a long time. Lived there. Spent a few stints, 15, 20 years at a time there. I spent most of my time, though, I was on board one of the Aurora class ships. So that's my major experience of non-military life. The Aurora class ships have like, they're almost like a colony ship, mobile colony ship. And they were exceptionally well run, exceptionally clean. The entertainment that they have, they love live entertainment. They love watching skillful musicians and artists and whatnot. I remember that. They love having a regular performance night. I know on the Aurora class that I was on, there was one particular night once in a period, fairly regularly, where a lot of the population of the ship would gather in their stadium, and there would be performances. It was a great night. Everybody loved it. It was a great social, time. And the music, the older music in the German colonies is classical, like 19th century sort of stuff, going into early 20th century, but then they kind of evolved, I think, their own style of rock and roll, which kind of has a lot of classical influence to it, which is really good. A lot of it's really good. I mean, it's fantastic music. You can hear it here on Earth, but you'll notice it because it's got a lot of classical instruments in it. So it's like heavy metal, but with classical instruments.
Yeah.
Once you know what it sounds like, you'll pick it out pretty easily. Plus, a lot of them have lyrics that are to do with space.
You've noticed that the ones that I play, there's overlap.
Oh yeah.
And I have a definite pull to those.
Well, it's good music.
It is.
And maybe I also like it because it brings back it's fun memories,
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like they definitely evolved their own type of modern music, that's for certain. But the overlap is getting more and more. The lines are getting more and more blurred now between terrestrial music and music in the Bundes,
That could be a good thing. Music in the Bundes is good stuff. And they've been listening to bootleg copies.
They're very creative. Sorry?
They've been listening to bootleg copies of our stuff for a long time. Earth, before everything was on the internet, Earth was basically broadcasting to the entire solar system. So there were lots of bootleg copies of things, television and radio.
They in early years there was a lot of pride, a lot of us and them.
Mhm.
But in recent generations, I don't think they really care that much anymore. They still know who they are and where they came from, but they appreciate terrestrial stuff just as much.
Well, that is where their roots are.
There's a certain status to having terrestrial stuff, like having a desk that's made from Amazon timber, or having a jug that's made from clay from the foothills of the mountains of Wallachia. Wallachia, I think they call it.
Volati.
Yeah. So there's a certain status in having items that originate from Earth.
Mhm.
They have a lot of knockoff items though, but they don't do. I don't think the alcohol. For some reason, the alcohol that they can generate up there, it's not the same.
Well, Randy
it's just
Kramer
not.
says that that's our biggest import is beer.
Yeah.
Export, I should say.
The booze up there, it's just not it's not as good.
And they were terribly fond of the contraband we brought.
Oh yeah, yeah. See their little eyes light up. What have you got? Well, how about we go have a drink?
Yeah.
Um,
pour them a shot and go, try this.
Yeah. They don't smoke as a general rule, but they're willing to give like a cigar a go. And that never turns out well. A lot of them have been living in very purified air for most of their lives, and they just don't have the capacity for dealing with like inhaling thick smoke. So they don't smoke. The food is good though. Germans know how to make food. Let me tell you that much. And they're very creative with their food. Like, like they have restaurants. They have like very elitist chefs. They have a pride in food. They I think some of the food though that they kind of inherited from French food. I get that impression. It's not all schnitzels and spätzle and mushroom sauce.
Well, the Frankish people were Germans, so it's not that far off. And the Italian people, in spite of all their talk about Rome, most of the country was empty when the Lombards came through, and the Lombards were another German tribe. So the major cuisines of Europe are based in German tribal food anyway. So,
well, they love their food, that's for damn sure. And I have no problems loving their food either. So when I was there, they ate well, they lived well. They were very, you could almost say it was like a tribal thing. They very much so looked after their own. You know, each person, each citizen was an asset. Nobody up there is refuse that can be thrown away. Everybody is valuable and valued. Some more than others, but it's not like humans up there were like discarded. They look after themselves. There's too few of them to treat like, you know,
Yeah.
without value. So, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes perfect sense.
So,
I live in California, where homelessness and the discarded humans are one of the major issues in our state at the moment, as in we have so priced them out of the cost of living that now we have to do something about it. So
yeah. Well, they don't have homelessness up there. That's that. It's not even a concept, I think, that enters their minds in general life. They the what happens here on Earth, I think, horrifies your average German up there.
well, it should
Exists.
horrify us.
Mm.
I've actually been mortified that it doesn't.
Mm.
So.
And I think when their children see how some people are treated down here, their parents kind of nod to them and say, you know, aren't you glad you don't live there?
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, I've been getting a lot of feedback off of YouTube about people think, you know, how they used to do, where they thought that the Pleiadians were going to come save them. Now they're trying to tell me that the Germans in space are going to come save them. And I have not been able to get through to them that it isn't going to happen, that the Germans in space may have been from Earth, but they are no longer interested in risking what they have to come save us from our own problems. And that since they are a tribal society, that's how they see it, is those are our problems.
I mean, they're not unempathetic. And
oh
I
no,
suspect when the shit hits the fan shortly, I suspect that they're going to probably make themselves known and probably help
if they're able to, with the Guardians trying to move them back into the solar system. They may not have the capability at that point. They'll be too involved.
Well, I know that they're kind of overwhelmed with their own problems at the moment. So
yeah,
you know, I suspect that's why that Aurora class ship is docked at Ceres at the moment, is it's basically living space.
Yeah. If the event that the Ponti are predicting happens, then such things will be necessary.
Well, I've been watching it. There have been a number of different stars have basically been sneezing in succession as their distance from Earth. Been watching it carefully and trying to ascertain exactly where the front is, what direction it's coming from. I know it's entered the solar system now.
Yeah.
It's past the orbit. It's already overlapped Uranus, I think. So that's where we're sitting at the moment. I think it's they've been noticing changes with Saturn. So
Yeah,
maybe it
Saturn's
was Saturn. I
lost its
definitely know
rings.
Uranus is. Yeah, there's some big changes. So, but anyway, we weren't going to talk about negative stuff anyway. I prefer not to.
Okay, well, we are at our time. Thank you much for coming, and thank you, audience, for listening.
Thank you for having me. It's always fun. It's good to have a chat again.